coming up. The FBI says the New Orleans New Year's Day attack suspect was a member of the Islamic State terror group. The Republican Party's apparent unified control of the Senate, House of Representatives, and presidency faces challenges. We'll have details from Capitol Hill. And a thriving Namibia film industry gets global recognition, with local filmmakers and productions receiving acclaim for their unique storytelling and cultural authenticity. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. Topping our broadcast is the terror attack investigation ongoing in New Orleans. The FBI now says the attacker acted alone in, quote, an act of terrorism when he drove a pickup truck into a crowd of New Year's revelers early Wednesday, killing 14 people. The FBI also says Shamsuddin Jabbar was a member of the Islamic State terror group. VOA White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has more.
Heavy police presence in New Orleans Thursday after a driver slammed past a security blockade into the crowd celebrating the new year. 14 were killed and dozens injured before police shot and killed the driver. The suspect, Shamsuddin Jabbar, was an army veteran who served in Afghanistan. Just before the attack, Jabbar posted videos online to proclaim his support for the terror group Islamic State, also known as ISIS.
In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers, end quote. Additionally, he stated he had joined ISIS before this summer.
IS once imposed a reign of terror in Iraq and Syria before a U.S.-led coalition ended its self-declared caliphate. President Joe Biden met his Homeland Security team Thursday.
We're going to continue to relentlessly pursue ISIS and other terrorist organizations where they are, and they'll find no safe harbor here.
IS has experienced a resurgence worldwide with plots in Russia, Turkey, Iran, and elsewhere. Its branch in Afghanistan, IS Khorasan, claimed responsibility for killing a minister in December, the latest in a string of suicide bombings in the country. IS urged its sympathizers to attack during the holidays. The group leveraged civilian suffering in Gaza to radicalize and recruit, says analyst Clara Brocart with the Sufan Group via Skype.
I think this is a really important aspect. While this is a more recent development, I will also say that the current situation in Syria, where there is some extent of a power vacuum in certain areas of Syria, will also see ISIS likely strengthening.
Authorities are also investigating the explosion of a Tesla Cybertruck outside the Trump International Las Vegas Hotel Wednesday. The truck was rented via the same app as the vehicle used in New Orleans. Authorities identified the truck's driver as Matthew Livelsberger, an active U.S. Army Special Operations soldier. The FBI says at this point there is no definitive link between the two attacks. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News at the White House.
The 119th U.S. Congress convenes Friday with one major task at hand, and that is the election of the House Speaker. But current Speaker Mike Johnson's shaky grip on the gavel is threatening not only his own survival, but President-elect Donald Trump's ambitious agenda. VOA Congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson reports.
A new U.S. Congress set to start Friday.
President Trump will return to D.C. and to the White House, and we will have Republican control of the Senate and the House. Things are going to be very different around here.
But Speaker of the House Mike Johnson's leadership position is in jeopardy after his deal last month with Democrats to keep the government funded and open.
Mr. Johnson caught a lot of fire from his GOP colleagues, and he has an extraordinarily limited margin for his majority, just a handful of people.
President-elect Donald Trump posted his support for Johnson on social media Monday, saying the speaker was, quote, a good, hardworking, religious man. But Republican Representatives Chip Roy and Thomas Massie have already stated their doubts about his leadership. And Trump ally and advisor Steve Bannon called on Republicans to remove Johnson from leadership.
Clearly, Johnson's not up to the task, and he's got to go.
2 years ago, at the start of another Congress, Republican Kevin McCarthy faced similar challenges to his bid for the speakership.
A speaker has not been elected.
He was finally elected on the 15th round of voting. Meanwhile, House Democrats have expressed concern about the influence of billionaire Elon Musk after he stalled the government funding bill by posting his concerns about it on social media.
Musk has been tweeting out all kinds of lies and misinformation about even what was in the package.
Change is also coming to the U.S. Senate as Republicans take the majority from Democrats, and Mitch McConnell steps away from party leadership for the first time in 18 years. John Thune of South Dakota will now be the top Republican.
We have a mandate from the American people, a mandate not only to clean up the mess left by the Biden-Harris-Schumer agenda, but also to deliver on President Trump's priorities.
Traditionally, the first 100 days of a new presidency and Congress are a time for an ambitious legislative agenda.
He's going to hit tariffs very hard. He's going to focus on the border and executive orders related to immigration and immigrants, particularly from Mexico and Muslim countries. And then he's going to work on any compromises he can to get through the legislative agenda on things affecting the economy, groceries, as he likes to call it.
The U.S. House of Representatives is also scheduled to certify the results of the 2024 election next Monday, confirming Donald Trump won the presidency. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
A record number of black lawmakers are also set to take seats in Congress, representing a larger share of Americans than ever before. VOA's Anthony Labruto has more on what the Congressional group plans to tackle in the new legislative session.
Representing the majority of black legislators within Capitol Hill, the United States Congressional Black Caucus welcomed 62 legislators, its most ever, for the upcoming start of the 119th Congress. Speaking at a press conference, outgoing chairman of the caucus, Stephen Horsford, expressed optimism and excitement over two senators-elect, Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware and Angela Olsobrooks of Maryland, who will make history as the first two black women to serve simultaneously in the nation's upper chamber.
As House Democrats, we will work to find bipartisan solutions when possible. This week, as we commemorated what would have been the 100th birthday of one of our founding members, Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, I was reminded of the immense contribution that black women have always had on our caucus.
Though membership is not exclusively offered to members of the Democratic Party, the caucus has been historically a progressive identifying group, often referred to by its members as the conscience of the Congress, in reference to the civil rights leader and former caucus member John Lewis. As incoming chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Representative Yvette D. Clarke highlighted some of the group's priorities.
It demands us to do the job our constituents sent us to Washington to do. The causes of economic equity, health care, criminal justice reform, and education, women's rights, voting rights must remain the cause of the Congressional Black Caucus.
The statement comes in part due to increasing statements from then Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump about repealing federally mandated diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, or DEI, which was a focal point in his campaign.
To vigorously enforce yesterday's Supreme Court ruling, I will eliminate all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across the entire federal government.
Senate Republican member Tommy Tuberville echoed Trump's support for the repeal of DEI initiatives in his pick for Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth.
We need somebody to straighten the military out, to get the woke, the DEI affiliation out, and go from there.
Representative Clarke also spoke about the challenges ahead as the caucus navigates its agenda in the opposition.
The next 2 years will stand among the most trying in our caucus's history, and we must be the resistance against extremism and continue to be the conscience of the Congress. The CBC will have to fight back against a second Trump administration, and now more than ever, as a caucus, we must remain vigilant in fulfilling our mission to address and enact policy to uplift our communities across this nation and deliver on our promises.
Analysts predict that the slim Republican majority might not have enough ideological unity within the party itself to achieve their goals.
Legislatively, members do seem to have some major legislative goals around things like taxes, increased enforcement of immigration law, energy policy, increased defense spending. They will, however, face a challenge in that their majority, especially in the House, is quite narrow. So at the very start of the Congress, the House majority will be 219 for Republicans, and then compared to 215 for Democrats.
The caucus, though, sees the opportunity to deliver on some promises, happening likely through negotiation on other bills.
Democrats and Republicans do have to negotiate on government funding. That's a place where Republicans may want to get some somewhat symbolic wins on these sorts of social issues, and where Democrats may try and push back. It's hard to see or hard to say who's likely to win those fights.
Members of the 119th Congress will officially begin their term today. Anthony Labruto, VOA News, Washington.
A staggering 30 million people in Sudan are in need of humanitarian assistance in 2025, according to a United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs report. This represents a sharp 23% increase from the nearly 25 million people recorded in its previous report. The report also reveals about 16 million are minors. Sudan's Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan 2025 is seeking $4.2 billion to provide aid and protection to 21 million of the most vulnerable people, according to the report. Africa had mixed gains and pains in 2024, with some countries experiencing political upheaval, with an ongoing war in Sudan, unrest in parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Gen Zs protesting against tax hikes and abduction of women in Kenya. For more on what to expect from the continent in 2025, I'm joined live from Dallas, Texas by Kennedy Masiye, an African political analyst and Zimbabwean human rights lawyer. Kennedy, Happy New Year and welcome again to Africa 54.
Happy New Year and thank you.
Now, name at least 3 African countries that performed poorly economically and in terms of human rights protections, and why did they perform poorly?
Yes, so pretty much the 3 countries which include Burundi, South Sudan, and Malawi. Burundi basically has been struggling with political instability, inadequate infrastructure, and widespread poverty. And civic and conflict, ethnic tensions have troubled Burundi for decades, and these continued in 2024. With South Sudan, the same thing as well. There's civil conflict, and the GDP stands at just $246. And the country faces severe humanitarian crises, including food shortages, displacements, and the protracted conflict has devastated infrastructure, disrupted agriculture, and left millions in urgent assistance. Going to Malawi, Malawi itself has got a GDP, had a GDP of $380, and Malawi's economy is primarily agriculture, and it's highly vulnerable to climate changes, and it did not fare well economically, as there were frequent droughts leading to food insecurity and malnutrition.
Now, if you could name perhaps 2 African countries that did well in 2024, which ones would they be, and what did they change?
Yeah, so basically I would name Niger and Senegal. So Niger's GDP grew by 12.8%, and Niger became the 3rd fastest growing economy in the world. Surprisingly, the fastest growing economy in Africa. Even though there was a coup d'etat that happened in July 2023, Niger faced numerous economic sanctions after that coup d'etat, but it possesses significant oil deposits, and these have significantly improved the country's economy. And Senegal also has grown to become the 2nd fastest growing economy in Africa. This is likely due to its rapid growth in hydrocarbons, in the hydrocarbon industry. Between the years 2010 2014 and 2017, there was a discovery of more than 40 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in that country. So I can name these two countries as the countries that have improved significantly in 2024.
And very quickly, Ken, what should the poor performers do differently this year to improve the lives of their citizens?
I think poor performers should promote peace and dialogue, especially in countries that face conflict. They should also strengthen governance and the economic development initiatives in their respective countries. Regional cooperation also is important, and collaborating with neighboring countries on security development can also help stabilize these countries, especially in conflict-affected regions, and prevent the spillover effects.
Mr. Masie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kennedy Masie is an African political analyst and Zimbabwean human rights lawyer. Still to come, Namibia's film industry gets global recognition. We'll be right back.
A famous author once wrote, "A vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision just passes the time. A vision with action can change the world." As we begin a new year, let us come together on the next episode of Our Voices to explore the power of using a vision board to achieve our goals in 2025. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, Ghana recently granted citizenship to 524 people from the Black diaspora, and most were Black Americans. It is the largest group to be granted citizenship at one time since Ghana launched its Year of Return initiative in 2019. The launch marked 400 years since the first African slaves arrived in Virginia in 1619. Some of the citizenship ceremony cheered and waved Ghanaian flags or wept. Others say they felt a sense of peace and belonging that they didn't have in the United States. Natural gas prices in Europe are rising after Ukraine ended the flow of Russian gas across its territory into the European Union. As Henry Ridgwell reports, Moscow once supplied more than one-third of Europe's needs, but the continent has managed to wean itself off Russian gas following the Kremlin's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Namibia's growing film industry is gaining recognition on the global stage.
Level since October 2023. It follows Ukraine's decision to end the transit of Russian gas across its territory to Europe on January 1st. Moscow is set to lose over $5 billion a year, while Ukraine will lose around $800 million in transit fees. But the impact on Europe will be limited, says energy analyst Thomas O'Donnell.
It was all prepared for. It's basically all priced in. Now, of course, there's winners and losers to a certain point. Certain countries are more dependent on this than others. Slovakia, Hungary, for example, Austria. They will have plenty of gas. It's just that they'll have to pay more, like everybody else has all along.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said last month he would no longer give Russia the opportunity to earn additional billions, while its forces continued to wage a war of aggression on Ukraine's soil. Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico is close to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The two met in Moscow last month. Fico opposes Western support for Kyiv. Speaking Wednesday after Ukraine cut the Russian gas supply, he accused the EU of sacrificing the interests of smaller members for what he called meaningless geopolitical goals.
It will have drastic impact on all of us in the European Union, but not on the Russian Federation.
In reality, the European Union has drastically cut its dependence on Russian gas, thanks in part to a big increase in liquefied natural gas imports from the United States. Imports of Russian gas through Ukraine made up around 5% of Europe's total supplies in 2024. Some of the gas was sent on to Western Europe through Slovakia, and that explains Fico's concerns, says O'Donnell.
Slovakia was making, I think it's something like $500 million on transit fees, passing the gas across their country through their pipeline system onto others.
Before its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Russia's state-run Gazprom was Europe's largest gas supplier. Putin miscalculated Europe's response, says O'Donnell.
Putin portrays himself as a great Russian nationalist. Well, this great Russian nationalist just lost one of the biggest businesses Russia ever had.
Moscow's other supply routes to Europe are limited. The Yamal-Europe pipeline via Belarus was shut down in 2022. Months later, the Nord Stream pipeline under the Baltic to Germany was sabotaged. Russia is still able to supply gas to Hungary, Turkey and Serbia through the Turk Stream pipeline. Henry Ridgwell, VOA News.
Namibia's growing film industry is gaining recognition on the global stage, with local filmmakers and productions receiving acclaim for their unique storytelling and cultural authenticity. Jackson Vunganyi spoke to Namibian filmmaker Perivi Kajavivi about his film Under the Hanging Tree, his creative process and the power of storytelling in reclaiming history. Hello, Jackson.
Hello, Esther. Now, this groundbreaking film draws from Herero mythology and the symbolism of the Omumborombonga tree in local culture. Kajavivi tells me that the film was born out of the need to examine his country's historical legacy and its colonial past. Let's check it out.
Well, the film started as, I think, a desire to sort of look back and to try and make sense of some of our histories in Namibia, and to look at a difficult period, the colonial period, when Namibia was ruled by Germany, and we were under sort of German colonial rule, and the subsequent Herero genocide, which occurred between 1904 and 1908. My father's, let me get this right, my father's grandmother's sister was in that war and was injured and was shot and raised my father. She was really my dad's key maternal
That's the
figure.
Herero fighting against the German colonial...
That's right,
yeah.
that's right. So we grew up with those stories being passed down from her to my dad, to me and my siblings. So I'd always wanted to make a film that looked at that, but from our perspective of waking up to the past and making sense of it and digging and looking. So I just felt very early on I had to have a police officer at the center of this story, because detectives like to dig and kind of investigate and look and dig up the past in this kind of way. So it felt appropriate. So we developed it then initially as a TV series, then as a film, as a way to kind of, on the surface, you think as an audience you're walking into a film that has familiar genre tropes, and there's a noir or crime detective element. But then it becomes something very different. It becomes a film where somebody coined the phrase, you're trying to decolonize the form.
Decolonize the form?
Which we were trying to do in a way. So decolonizing film, partly with the form of it, so it doesn't...
You append the whole like linear or non-linear structure of the film.
Exactly. So you think you're watching something that is a traditional cop film, and then it becomes a bit of a slow film, and it becomes a bit experimental and artsy. But then there was, to center some of the early filmmakers from West Africa, like Suleiman Cissé, this idea of centering the traditions of the community and the rituals over narrative and plot. So there are times when you expect, again, sort of certain narrative and plot, tropes from Hollywood filmmaking, but instead you're watching somebody perform a ritual under a tree with fire.
Amunjidu. Ohuru tutuku mwaya. No matuve paha. Matu kotora. Ombintu. Jatika mehire tundu.
Namibian film or cinema is still emerging on the global stage. What would you say are some of the unique challenges, like filmmakers or storytellers like you still face, and some of the opportunities that are available for young filmmakers that are hoping to, to embark on this journey of storytelling?
Yeah, I think I'll be boring and say that the same old challenges apply, like funding, access to audiences, access to equipment, even in a sense, the sort of technology and gear. But it's never been easier, I think. It's all relative, of course, but just I really do have to just have a perspective here and remember there was a time when there were no films, no filmmakers.
Absolutely.
Now, you know, we've had a submission to the Oscars. We've had Namibians with making films that have been on Netflix and Amazon Prime and other big streamers and international platforms. So things have changed dramatically from when I was a kid, if I was to remember. I think one of the biggest things is film language. We're still, what is an African film, right? Even some of the old classics, there was pushback and criticism because many of the films would be edited in France, ultimately, even if they were shot in Africa by Africans. So what does it mean for a film really to be called African? And in a global world as well, where we collaborate and co-productions are the rule of the game in the independent film industry for the most part. So what do you mean? Is it the money? Is it the identity of the filmmaker?
Or the story itself?
Is it the story itself, where it takes place, who's in it? Does it matter if I do my editing in Colombia or Sweden? Can it still be an African film? But more importantly, film language. What's an African film? Is it Nollywood? Is it the Nollywood aesthetic? What type of storytelling? Is it the commercial films coming out of South Africa that are all on Netflix? What is it? Is it an East African sensibility? West Africans taught us that film is linked to the griot tradition, where memory, wisdom keepers. Or is it a commercial medium? Or is it an artistic thing? Can I just be artistic? So the exciting thing for me, I think, as a Namibian, is watching that conversation evolve, right? And we are not penned into anything. Namibian film could be anything.
That was Perivi Kajavivi, the filmmaker behind the film Under the Hanging Tree. The movie made history as Namibia's first ever submission for the Oscars in the Best International Feature Film category. You can watch the full interview on our website at voaafrica.com. Esther, back to you.
Nice there, Jackson Bungani. He joined us today for Entertainment Reports, and we ask you to join us every Friday right here for Entertainment Reports on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a great weekend.